North Omaha History Podcast made possible by our patrons Jay Hanna, Wanda Lewis, Ian Schneider, Lori Schwartz, Christine Gerber, Jody Lavallo, Jim Collison, Abby Hightoff, and the Great Plains Black History Museum, open Thursday through Saturday from 1 to 5 at 24th and Grant. Please go to patreon.com/Omaha and become a patron for as little as $1 a month. We'll give you a free gift.
Welcome to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sassy. Each week, Adam takes you on a guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.
One of the first suburbs in Omaha is the Walnut Hill neighborhood, bounded by Cuming on the south, the Radial and Saddle Creek Road on the west, North 40th on the east, and Lake Street on the north. The Walnut Hill neighborhood has a lot of unique features and a rich history. Tell us more, Adam.
Some neighborhoods are more intricately woven than others. You know, I take a lot of liberty in talking about North Omaha's historic neighborhoods. I've tracked more than 30 of these, Steve. And by that, I mean that they are more than 100 years old, that they have some historical provenance, you know, some things that have happened and some real relevance to the growth of this city. But like I said, some neighborhoods are more intricate than others, and Walnut Hill is one of those neighborhoods. Its history goes way, way back, and I suspect it's even before 1856 when Omaha was founded. But that year, a guy named Jesse Lowe laid claim to an entire 160-acre spread. His place was over on what was called Lowe Avenue at the time, but right about 40th Street, and just south of Cuming there. Him and his wife had a farmstead, and this farmstead covered all the way from what we call Hamilton Street today, all the way south through the Gifford Park neighborhood. And it just swallowed up all kinds of land. The Lowe's event, Jesse passed away. He was important in Omaha history, had roles as a mayor and all kinds of different elected positions, and he just did all kinds of things around town. He was one of those early pioneers. But him and his wife and their land, man, they held on to this thing tight. Sophia Lowe owned it. She was Mrs. Lowe, and she owned that land. She was the one who eventually ended up selling it to a guy named Bemis. Before then, though, it's important to note that Hamilton Street, the northern border of the Walnut Hill neighborhood, Hamilton Street began definitely before Omaha was a city and before Nebraska was a formal territory. It started its life as a military road. The original military road followed California Street from the Missouri River front. And it followed California Street and then followed present-day Hamilton and then went out to Saddle Creek, went along Saddle Creek and out to Military Road as we know it's called today, and further west of that, and eventually went to Fremont and onwards. But that part right there in the Walnut Hill neighborhood was part of Military Road originally, and it was chosen because it sat on top of a ridge with a clear view of the valley that they anticipated a city would be built inside of. And bada bing, bada boom, boy, were they right. A city did get built there for sure. That city, man, oh man. Well, anyway, long story short, eventually Sophia Lowe sold not to Bemis, but to Sam Mercer. Mercer was a doctor in Omaha, really successful. This was 1885, long time after Omaha was founded and got running. Mercer picked up the land north of Cuming, all the way up to the old Military Road, a.k.a. Hamilton. And he began to develop it. He began to turn it over into a great place where all kinds of things happened. You know, early on, he put in Galesburg brick pavers to go up what we call Cuming Street today. Cuming Street was named after one of Nebraska's first territorial legislators, Tom Cuming. Kind of a shady dude, all tied up in Council Bluffs business interests. But they wanted to honor him, so they called the street Cuming Street. And it went right up that hill, and it was covered with brick pavers, one of the very first streets in all of Omaha to be covered with brick pavers, all paid for out of the pocket of Doc Mercer. Doc Mercer built his gigantic mansion right up at 40th and Cuming Street, just outside of the neighborhood bearing his name. And that mansion was spectacular. It still is spectacular. It still stands there today. You can stand on the sidewalk to look at it, but don't you dare get on that land. It's private property, you know. Anyhow, as that mansion developed, lots of other fancy folks wanted to move in, and so they developed the area around it. You'll find Mercer Park on the eastern edge of the Walnut Hill neighborhood, named after Sam Mercer's deceased loved one. And eventually the city of Omaha put in a gigantic reservoir right there. We've talked about that in another podcast, but it's worth noting that was definitely part of the Walnut Hill neighborhood, the Walnut Hill Reservoir. You know, one of the most popular historical business districts in all of Omaha back in the olden days was right at 40th and Hamilton, packing up that entire northeast corner of the historic Walnut Hill neighborhood. It was home to a donut shop that lots of people loved. That corner is actually experiencing a bit of a resurgence today. John Hargis is a local businessman who's turning it over. He's got his string instrument shop, and the 40th Street Theater's open again because of his hard work. The Olympia Bicycles has been right there on the corner of 40th and Hamilton for a long time now, for more than 40 years. And it's definitely an anchor for that intersection to make a great comeback. Walnut Hill is actually the home to a historic light industrial district that is actually still successful. There you can find on the old the Beltline Railroad used to run right through Walnut Hill. It went from about 42nd Street to 45th Street, and that entire area where the Beltline ran was covered with this light industry. And they did all kinds of things, coal and ice and all kinds of manufacturing, small manufacturing businesses, different things like that popped up in that area. And they're still there, and lots of others are. At one point, Omar built a big factory Omar was a bread making company, and they built a big factory along Cuming Street, and that building's still there and being reused for different things. One of the cool features of the Walnut Hill neighborhood are all the old churches, and one of the least known old churches is right at 45th and Hamilton. That little building, which still stands today, has had a really great little history where it's been, home to some exotic kind of congregations, and Presbyterian Church at 40th and Nicholas, just different stuff, and just a fun place. The Lowe Avenue Press is still there, and that was actually named after Sophia Lowe herself, who donated the land and made it a place that lots of people wanted to go to. Steve, there are so many historically important buildings in the neighborhood that it's hard to talk about them all. But to do them a little bit of justice, I will say that a person today could drive by along Mercer Boulevard, along Mercer Park Road, along Hamilton Street, Nicholas Street, Lafayette Avenue, Cuming Street, and Izzard, and they will see all kinds of great, great houses and big buildings that definitely contributed to the real wealth of historical relevance in the Walnut Hill neighborhood. One of the things that made it so complex were all these different kinds of competing interests that were both residential, they were religious, they were industrial, they were commercial, and even the government space at the Walnut Hill Reservoir, all these different things going on. One of the other things that Doc Mercer did was run a streetcar up Cuming Street, and it was one of the first streetcar suburbs because of that. Right at the turn of the century, you could find few other streetcars that were running anywhere in Omaha, particularly North Omaha, and Mercer did it. He brought it right in. I'll tell you what, though, a lot of other things happened in Walnut Hill. They had a two-room schoolhouse and then a four-room schoolhouse starting way back in the 1880s and 90s. And then in 1926, the Omaha Public Schools built a major building, the Walnut Hill Elementary School, on Charles Street, and it's still there today. It's been renovated and is great condition, and is serving all kinds of kids from around that local neighborhood, the Orchard Hill neighborhood and other ones that are right near. One of the recent losses in the neighborhood, though, came from the Methodist Hospital. Unfortunately, the building that was built there in 1908 was just demolished this last year, right at 36th and Cuming. It had been home to the Salvation Army for at least 30 years. And before that, it was the Midtown Methodist Hospital. The Midtown Methodist Hospital only gained that name when the Methodists moved their main facility out on Dodge Street, where it's still at today. But the history of that hospital in the Walnut Hill neighborhood went way back to 1908, when they took over a mansion in the neighborhood, and they eventually built a new building and did all kinds of things there for a long time. So that 80-year history is all gone now, and there's no more presence for the former Methodist hospital in the neighborhood. But what a person can see from back then extends so far and it goes so many directions, whether we're talking about the Mercer Mansion at 39th and Cuming, or if we're talking about the Walnut Hill Reservoir that's being taken out by the city soon, so it's good to go and see it now, or the historic Walnut Hill School, the different boulevards that run through and around the neighborhood, and definitely those houses and buildings, so many beautiful homes. You know, 2 homes that are really worth mentioning. One is called the Neely House, and I fell in love with the Neely House. It's at 43rd and Hamilton, built in 1905. That house has more than 4,000 square feet from back then. Today it's apartments, but imagine it at its peak, and that's all I can do when I see its neoclassical elements and all the different spectacular features that were once there. Another house that still has its historical features in the neighborhood is at 40th and Izard. It's called the Mason House. And the Mason House was built in 1890 as this Queen Anne style home, Victorian era, lots of elaborate woodwork and beautiful paint jobs and fireplaces with pottery from Holland on them. But it also has this gigantic turret and swooping roof lines and strong neoclassical columns on the porch and just all kinds of great elements. You know, one of my favorite blogs online, and a lot of people share it with me, is the myomahaobsession.com. And she has a spectacular article on 4025 Izard, this Mason House. And one of the things that she uncovers is a castle, a fairyland castle that's in the backyard of that house. So I definitely recommend that you look at myomahaobsession.com and check out the Mason House there. But go and drive around the Walnut Hill neighborhood right now. Go take a look and just soak in what it was. Take a look at northomahahistory.com, read about what it is and can be, and really understand this is one of the most intricate, beautiful, and historically relevant neighborhoods in all of North Omaha and the entire city, frankly. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of it in the future, as well as learning more about its past.
Thanks for listening to the North Omaha History Podcast with noted author and historian Adam Fletcher Sasse. Join us next week as Adam takes you on another guided tour through Omaha's dynamic past.